discover just how many government services really are non-essential. A budget deal would be great, but any deal made on the basis of bad information is bound to fail long-term. Things like the liar loans of the subprime days, for example. Liar loans can destroy a market, and liar bills can destroy our country. For more on all this, we welcome two freshman Republican Congressmen, David Schweikert of Arizona and Michael Grimm of New York. Good to see you guys. So, David Schweikert, first to you. You've actually suggested that some folks on the other side of the aisle are looking into the camera and lying, knowing that they're lying. What are they lying about?
Well, consider the piece you just did. Would you believe they're willing to look in the camera and be absolutely duplicitous in what they say? What's been fascinating is the number of members I see get in and say, well, if we would just tax the rich more, if we just didn't have the wars, if we did this, that, everything would be fine. And then you pull out your calculator, you go to them and say, you realize you're talking about 6% of the debt. And they scurry away saying, oh, but we don't want to talk about the truth. This is political theater, I believe we're all watching right now.
Congressman Grimm, the numbers are basically there, according to Harry Reid. He said, and I am quoting him here, the numbers are basically there. The only thing holding up an agreement is ideology. Is that true or a lie?
I don't think that's true at all. I mean, here's the reality. Democrats have not demonstrated that they've been serious about cutting spending at all. Last year, they had the House, the Senate, the presidency, and we didn't get a budget. Why not? It's very simple why not. They didn't want the American people to see how much money they were going to spend. Their philosophy is to tax more, borrow more, and spend more. That's an equation or a formula for the bankrupting of America. That's the track we're on. So they're not serious about cutting, and that's, again, proof because the president's proposed budget is completely void of dealing with the driving force in our debt, which are the entitlements. Doesn't even mention them. So they have twice shown that they're not serious about cutting. If they were serious, why wouldn't the Senate pass H.R. 1? It's that simple.
And
we passed it over 40-some-odd days ago.
As a former FBI agent, as a former Marine, we should mention,
yes,
to hear the Marine Corps, to hear all of our armed services brought up as being held hostage by what you guys are doing, that must hit you hard.
It does. I mean, there's no mistake about it.
Forgive me, sir. Pay off the national debt.
Sorry. I guess we had a little interruption there.
But you're seeing
that's all right. They didn't know that they were taking on a former FBI agent and Marine. I'd like to see it get any hotter than that. Go ahead.
You just saw another great example of some of the political theater that's going on in this town.
There's a lot of political theater.
It has nothing to do with the actual facts we're working on.
Exactly.
But Mr. Grimm, talk about the fact that now we are seeing troops brought into the picture and suggestions that you guys are holding them hostage.
Now, listen, that's the reason we passed this bill today. You know, my biggest problem, and I told leadership this after our second CR, is that the short-term CRs are hurting the DOD. We're not able to, the military's not able to fully function with these short-term CRs. And I told them I was very uncomfortable moving forward with an additional CR, putting our troops through that. And that's why we came up with the legislation you saw today, and it passed the House. We want to take that off the table. Let's not have the spouses back home worried about paying their children while the men and women in uniform are in harm's way downrange. That's unacceptable to me, and that's why we passed this legislation
today. Well, Congressman
Schweikert,
we do see, I mentioned the poll during my opening comments, we have this Fox News poll that show that 58% of Americans do believe that even a partial government shutdown would have a dramatic effect on the lives of Americans. So some of this hysterical talk is getting through.
Yeah, and it's frustrating because how do you tell the American people saying, look, a shutdown is not good government policy. This is not the way to run a government. But the fact matters, if we cannot make a difference on this little bit of money, how do we take on the trillions of dollars of debt that are ahead of us? How do you have an honest conversation about this 2012 budget when we can't even finish out this year with the Senate? Look, as Michael was just saying, we passed a continuing resolution at the end of the year. Then we did a 2-week. Then we did a 3-week. Then we provided a whole other set of options. Then today we offered another week. When does the Senate pull out their calculator and do some of their work?
Well, clearly, Congressman Grimm, what's going on here is a political game. They care a lot more about sticking you guys with being responsible for a government shutdown than they do about getting a compromised budget, right?
but that makes perfect sense to me. I mean, think this through. They failed to pass a budget, and now they want to focus on a shutdown where all the media and everyone's attention goes to a shutdown so that they don't have to talk about the proposal that Chairman Paul Ryan just put forward to cut $6.2 trillion. You can pick apart the particulars, and maybe it needs to be tweaked here and there, but at the end of the day, that is a serious, measurable difference if we can pass that legislation. They don't want to talk about that because they don't have any alternative. So they want everyone to focus on a shutdown so they don't have to talk about their abdication of leadership in failing to pass any budgets at all and to deal with this crisis. We're in a fiscal crisis that they don't know how to deal with, so they're using smoke and mirrors, and it's disgraceful.
Well, so Congressman Schweikert, how long, if there is a government shutdown, if there's no more movement on either side, are we going to see like a 21 day? Are we going to see a historical shutdown or a partial shutdown of the government?
Well, first out, I'm pathologically optimistic. I'm one of those who's actually hoping that at the last moment we pull this rabbit out of the hat, we come to a rational agreement, and we can now get to the really tough work, which is actually the 2012 budget. But one thing I did want to pitch you on looking at, take a look at today's 10-year benchmark bond. Did you know how, in many ways, it's barely moved at all? I'm hoping we're telegraphing to the debt markets around the world, we are finally going to take U.S. sovereign debt, this mountain of debt we've built up, and we're going to take it seriously. And by doing that, we're going to save ourselves, we're going to save our kids and our grandkids.
And we'd save our dollar, by the way, too, which has been sinking precipitously.
It's our only choice.
Yeah,
exactly. Right. So this is more important than just the theater that the politics and what you saw a moment ago and the fussing back and forth with the Senate. This really is about the financial survival of this country.
Congressman Schweikert, Congressman Grimm, good to see you both. Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here. Well, do you think a government shutdown will happen? And if so, what would be the impact